Open source 3D AI just become much more interesting because Pixal3D just got low VRAM GGUF version. Then Apple introduced LiTo for image to 3D generation, and NVIDIA introduces another huge breakthrough for game industry, introducing real-time AI motion system.
Alright guys, so last time we talked about Pixal3D, which is this new 3D AI generator developed by Tencent and built on Trados 2. And huge news is that we now have a GGUF version working in ComfyUI. And this is especially great because it runs on only 6 gigs of VRAM locally for free on your own PC. And basically it's based on the ComfyUI Trados 2 repository that you might remember from videos that I covered in the past. And you will see that Visual Bruno added here a Pixal3D implementation, which basically means that you can use the Trados 2 package directly in combination with Pixal3D, which is of course simply amazing because you only need to do the installation once and then it will work for you. And other great news about Pixal is that it runs now officially under the MIT license, which they just changed like a few days ago, which is of course really great news for all of us that we can use it even commercially now and run it completely for free on our PC. And IAeroX, the creator of the weights for the Trados 2 GGUF version, has now also done the Pixal3D GGUF version, which is of course really big news because so far the general knowledge was that you can only run Pixal3D on 24 gigabytes of VRAM or at least 16 gigabytes of VRAM on low settings, but this one enables us to also run it low VRAM on your own GPU. And you will see that on the ComfyUI Trados 2 GGUF fork, here it's implemented and you will see that we have here then the implementation. This is of course here a bit cryptic, so let me show you some examples. So you will see here that we then have it directly in ComfyUI, where you can then basically choose Pixal3D GGUF in your load model loader, and you can then choose your preferred GGUF version from Q4 to Q8 and then run it through ComfyUI, basically through the workflow. And you will be then able to upload your own image and then directly view it in ComfyUI and then work with it, and of course later on also texture it in combination with Trados 2, which is of course really powerful. In case you would like to run it yourself on your own PC, a video about Pixal3D GGUF just launched on my channel and you can directly check it out there. It's already live for you, and there everything will be explained in detail for you. And now back to Stefan.
MotionBricks from the NVIDIA, and this one guys is really huge. I think probably this year for me this is one of the craziest thing I ever seen. I was not expecting it. So MotionBricks is like AI generated motion for 3D characters inside the game in real time. So there's like an engine, like a backbone that actually generates movements, so we can see that there is a character and the game, the all 3D environments, and we basically we give the directions, we give some what they call like smart primitives. We explain that there are some objects like either obstacles, either some interaction objects, and it figure out how to interact with these objects on flight. This is insane. I mean, even like taking some objects, like I don't know how to say, like this is such a big thing for games right now. You know, like jumps, crouches, taking objects, that's insane. Right now, this all is done with a very complex animation system with a lot of conditions, transitions, plenty of animations, and imagine how much easier it will become to develop games. There's a lot of effort already put into it, but now it will become easier and accessible, and that's insane. So I'm super excited. I will try to find a way to test it out and see how it works, and definitely gonna let you know. And the best news, it's already open sourced. It's under Apache 2.0 license. Insane.
Okay, and next up we have Helix 4D, which is basically 4D mesh generation. And you can imagine it that you upload a video as an input and you will get then a kind of animated 3D mesh out of it, which is of course really cool because you can see some examples here on the website where basically you see a 3D moving and where you can basically load a 4D model, and then you will notice you will actually see then a preview of what it's doing. So it's a really fast way, of course, to to iterate on animated objects that you see in a video and to transform it quickly then in 3D space, which is of course really useful. And you can see here some examples how it compares to, for example, Action Mesh, which we covered a few weeks ago. And you will see that Helix 4D is doing here a pretty good job with overall capturing the motion, which looks very promising overall. They also have a very interesting paper that you can check out here, basically, in case you're interested to read about the details, and also because it's based on Trellis 2, for example, where they iterated on. So really interesting stuff and definitely worth to check out.
Next up, we do have WaiWo 3D with the announcement for WaiWo World. They actually dropped like quite epic video showing like what they're building, and this is basically about generating whole worlds in photorealistic stuff. So what do we know about WaiWo? They were first to introduce this crazy 8K generations, and they do focus on this photorealism, right? To create very, very detailed environments, objects and stuff. So what they show is really impressive. And again, like if you work with realism and stuff, you can definitely take a look. But this one is not yet available for testing. When I do have the access, gonna drop a video about it.
Next up, we have now a working ComfyUI version for Apple LiTo. And this is of course really cool because it's a image to 3D Gaussian splat generator. And some of you might seen it already, that it's quite decent with the results and the splats that you get out of it. You can directly install it through the ComfyUI manager and then run it also locally on your own PC. And really curious to hear your thoughts about it.
And more news from NVIDIA. NVIDIA actually cooking crazy stuff. The model is called Sana WM, which is actually the model used for image and video training, but this one specifically is for real-time video generation. And again, it's open source, turns image and camera angle. So basically you can sort of like control it with fast keys and you can generate like any worlds. We already saw that, but this one is open source, minute-long generation. And again, they shared all the training stuff, etc. You might not be able to run it. To try and run it locally, you might need RTX 5090 minimum, and that will be a distilled version. But still, again, that's super cool. You can take a look on the paper, you can take a look on the examples that they show. Look quite impressive. But I already saw quite a lot of papers like this and even tested, like it started with Genie 3 from Google. For me, not yet clear what will be the use case of these generators.
As well, a really interesting one is Realis 3D. And this one serves basically as a framework to improve your texture from existing 3D data or 3D models that you have so far. And you will see it's created or researched by Meta AI actually and Technion. And it's really interesting because let me show you what it's doing actually. So for example, you can use Texture 3D, which basically means that you have your base mesh, then you have your standard fine-tuned mesh, kind of with your low poly or, you know, very rough texture. And then you can run Realis 3D on top of that, and you will see that you get a way better and cleaner texture than what you had before. Same thing you can see on those examples, for example, here on this lemon, where we get also a refined texture as well as on this penguin. And this is also possible here with multi-view results, as you can see here. So really interesting stuff, I would say, because so far we didn't see that this much, you know, what is possible with texture improvement, just like from existing 3D models. So definitely interesting to see that. And they also plan to release the code soon. So this could be eventually even be open sourced at some point.
Another super interesting release from actually the Roblox team, and this is related to their Cube model, specifically CubePart. So it's not yet open source, but it's open for academic research, and there's something special about it. So if you know anything about Roblox, then last year they was releasing Cube model that was able to create this 3D objects very fast textured. Then this year they also showed like that their model can do parts in a smart way and assembly, and this is pretty much like one of the coolest things that make these objects usable in game. And here is the cool thing and why this matters is that these guys also collected a huge huge part labeled dataset, which is the biggest of all. So we can see the comparison to PartNet, Partverse, ShapeNet, and other. And we can see like that they do have way more assets and parts and all that labeled. And so that's what they call is an open vocabulary part controllable 3D generator. This is an amazing news. I'm gonna keep track on that. It should be possible to run on 24 gig right now, but it's not yet available for commercial use. If something changed, we're gonna test it out and see if we can plug it into real pipelines. Another interesting paper released called REST3D, which actually stands for Reconstructing Physically Stable 3D Scene from a single image. The idea is that from one image you can extract a bunch of objects, but they are physically correct with the right mass and you can interact with them. So you can see the examples that they show. The mass, the physical properties are quite right and it makes it look natural. They compare themselves to other models and that looks quite impressive. And in compare with other models such as SAM3D, it really makes sense. There are more examples that you can take a look here and looks pretty cool. I wonder what models they use for 3D generation. It doesn't look like high quality, but it looks good and objects are built quite nicely. Evolution of such things gives so much possibilities later for reconstruction, for games, for different experiences. Super excited.
And then as a last thing, we have an official release by AssetHub, which is now publicly available for everyone to use. And this is of course especially great because this tool basically handles the whole 3D AR pipeline in one tool and combines it. So you can, for example, then create your image, split it in parts, have then all your parts segmented into one tool. You can then do as well retopology, texturing, and so on, all in one tool using the latest state-of-the-art generators like Tripo, Honeycomb 3D, and so on. And each step basically you control on yourself, which gives you, of course, the most control over your 3D workflow. So definitely exciting news and definitely also worth to check out.
And one more silent revolution is in 3D.js. I recently actually made quite a big video about 3D.js and what's happening, and there's quite a lot of updates there. One of the things crossed my radar was a AHOLO viewer that they dropped as open source from Manycore Tech team. And one of the coolest things is that they are now able to run up to 1 billion splots on the desktop thanks to advanced LOD system, right? So they also provide with the API and the library that you can use that will process these LODs so you'll be able to run it locally. So if you don't know, like before it was Spark 2.0 that also was doing quite a good job running up to 100 million, but these guys improve it 2 to 3 times depending on the parameters. Like it is runs more memory efficient. So far it already have almost 400 stars. For this topic it's a quite good result and you can actually try it for free. So if you guys work with 3D.js or want to start exploring, this is probably the best time. In my other video I also show like there's a lot of tools that helps to bring it to Unreal Engine, and things like generating collision helps a lot to moving into the real games in Unreal Engine and stuff. And one more update from Rodin. Actually Rodin did quite a lot of releases this month. I even made like dedicated video like to introduce like Gen 2.5, but just last week there was additional update which is extremely needed, and it introduces the manual bang, which is about splitting into the parts. So what they add is that like you can set the markers and separate parts like that. So pretty much the very easy workflow. You can do like that, just add the dots. I actually played with it for a while and it works nice. I really appreciate that they improved the speed of generation. Like before it was quite long, now it's way faster. And here we go, it works quite nice. And also what it makes more usable is that you can actually select a part and you can continue to bang it, right? Like that. Quite good. Right, why not? Or you can actually refine it and add more details. But the generation in the last updates is also improved. So that was all updates for this week, guys. Subscribe on my and Philip's channel to always get up to date with 3D AI workflows. Like and subscribe, and see you in the next video.
Alright guys, this was it for this week again. Having said that, see you on the next one.